Hello, welcome to Food Service Management RSTO2431 Unit 1 lecture. Now and I'm Chef Roster, by the way. You should have seen my welcome back video already. If you haven't, please take a minute to look through that. Before we jump into the lecture notes, please take a few minutes to go through the syllabi. There is in Blackboard, on the left-hand menu, there is a section for the syllabi. There's the part 1, which are my expectations of you as a student. And there's an addendum to part 1, which I'll cover in just a minute. And then there is the part 2 of the syllabi, which is your expectations of myself and the institution and this class in general. Speaking of the addendum to the syllabi, what that basically spells out is the moving of classes to the online format and how that affects you guys as students. We will not be requiring function hours. We will not be conducting supplemental instruction or SI courses this summer, much like the previous spring. So that being said, please take a few minutes to look through that, and I will answer questions on that when we have our class meeting. But know that I am doing my very best to provide you with the instruction that you expect and that you're paying for, be it in a classroom setting or virtually online. So again, take a few minutes to look through the syllabi just to get your bearings for this course and the calendar as well. Everything on the calendar is subject to change, and we'll talk about that a little bit throughout. After the lecture notes, we'll talk about the project and the assignments. Now please remember that everything is turned in via Blackboard. Please do not email me your assignments. I will not accept them. If you're having issues with Blackboard, you need to contact Blackboard the administrators for Blackboard or the Distance Learning Support Services office at EPCC, and I provided all of those numbers and information already in the class module content areas. So you can also call me, email me at any time if you're having issues, and I will do my best to walk you through it. But I am not a Blackboard expert. I am a culinary instructor, so if you need that help, please reach out for it, okay? So, Unit 1, Introduction to the Food Service Industry. So first thing we're going to talk about is the origins of the food service industry. Now, you may have heard some of this in your basics classes or some other class, depending on who your instructor is, but the modern restaurant industry or food service industry, as we know it, has not been around that long. Really, it is the child of the French Revolution. Now, we do talk about that often just because of the role it played in the history of our industry. Now, before the French Revolution, there was maybe a handful of independent restaurants in and around the Paris area, and that was a whole new concept aside from what it was before that, which was most people did not travel far from their homes. They cooked and ate in the household or with family members, and the restaurant industry as we knew it was really for travelers. If you were on the road, you would stop at an inn, put your horses up for the night, and eat whatever they were making. It was more of a roadhouse kind of thing. The modern restaurant industry, like I said, really has its birthplace from the French Revolution. And the French Revolution took place from 1789 to 1799, so not that long ago. According to French history, the first restaurant in history was Boulanger's in 1765. But after the French Revolution, what happened was it was an uprising of the common people. They overthrew the aristocracy or the royalty of the country, cut their heads off, and what that really did was it opened up the market for highly trained kitchen workers and chefs to go out and earn a living and not have to work for these noble houses in France. Another thing that it did is it abolished the guild system. Now, the guild system was a very antiquated way of kind of controlling how products were brought to market and who could do what with certain products. So the guilds there was a guild for honey, for winemaking, for pork fabrication, and you could not purchase outside of the guild. If you weren't in the guild, you could not do something like make sausage unless you were trained and approved by the guild. So with all of those constraints gone, we had all of these highly trained French chefs that were able to take their skill set and make products and sell them on the open market for whoever would pay them. And moving out of that, what we found was really two types of cuisine that existed: grande cuisine and cuisine bourgeoisie. The grande cuisine was still those big elaborate meals and multiple courses. They could take days, very elaborately garnished, very expensive, and that was for the people who still had money. The cuisine bourgeoisie was more of the common kind of everyday person's food. It was what you and I might have for dinner on any weeknight, whatever the case may be. From these times, a few really big names emerged. In the 19th century, Marie Antoine Carême was a very well-noted chef in that time, and he was kind of the father of grande cuisine, and that was all of that very elaborately presented, garnished stuff. Later in the 19th century, Auguste Escoffier came along, and what he did for our industry is really kind of amazing because he did so much. Escoffier pushed French cuisine to its rightful place of honor. He was born in the late 1800s, died in the early 1900s, and he did so many things. He instituted the brigade system, came up with the modern mother sauces. He codified recipes from all around the world, which is he made standard recipes from hundreds or if not thousands of recipes from different places, and kind of made them standard or codified them. He wrote multiple books. He was a mentor. He was just a real renaissance man when it came to our industry, and he pushed us out of that kind of old school period of those just two types of cuisine, and he made it a little more accessible for everybody. Okay. Towards the middle of the 20th century, trends began to change again, and more often than not, it's Escoffier that pushed these trends when we're talking about that time period. And the trend was towards lighter, more naturally flavored foods rather than those big, elaborately prepared banquet type things. Ferdinand Point was one of the leaders of that trend, and it was known as Nouvelle Cuisine. And if you've ever seen plates of very precisely placed and beautifully garnished, simple plates with a lot of empty space on them, that is Nouvelle Cuisine. There was some other notable chefs from that time period: Paul Bocuse, John and Pierre Tregas, Alain Chapelle, Francois Bisset, Louis Autier, Michel Girard, and Roger Verge. These were all guys that between the middle of the 1900s to up into the 1970s really pushed cuisine, not just in France, but throughout the world. And the Americans were a little late picking up on some of these influences, but once it caught on, it really took hold, and the American chefs really started developing their own styles of cuisine. In the late 20th century, the American culinary revolution began, like I just talked about, and the focus of the new American cuisine, as it's sometimes called, was fresh, locally grown, seasonal produce with menu changes, high quality ingredients, simply prepared in manners that emphasize natural ingredients and their flavors. Okay, today what we're looking at as far as the industry is trends towards lighter, healthier options. We're looking at specialized diets, whether it's keto or health-based diets like diabetes or heart disease. Current trends, we're looking at fusions. Also, we're bringing flavors and chefs from all over the world, and we're creating these blends of cuisine, and that's really an American kind of institution where we're bringing foods, ideas, ingredients, product, people in from other places and folding it into kind of the American food dialect, which makes it just an amazing time for you guys to be in a culinary program, because there's so much going on, and your career paths are wide open. If you don't want to go work in a kitchen, there's just so many things that you can do in this industry and still earn a good living, be involved in the culinary arts, and do all of these things. So some of the modern kind of pioneers that we need to talk about, especially when it comes to American the American food revolution, are people like Julia Child and James Beard. Both of these people are hugely instrumental in that new American food revolution. Paul Bocuse is another. There's just so many chefs out there that have really turned the tide for modern food service. Now, Julia Child and James Beard are both dead, but their legacy is lasting and will be around for a long, long time. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about, excuse me, and I will post the lecture notes next week for you guys to review for your exams, but I don't want to post them because you won't watch the videos. So the following week they will be posted. So the next thing we need to talk about is the distinguishment between commercial and non-commercial food service operations. Commercial food service operations are geared towards their main goal is to maximize profits. So they are for-profit businesses, and we'll talk about what that really means. So they tend to be freestanding restaurants, food service in lodging and hotel properties, public cafeterias, bars, things like that. The regular restaurants as we know them are commercial food service operations. Non-commercial food service operations, and this will help it make sense, are usually the food service is secondary to another mission. So if it's a school that has a cafeteria, their primary concern isn't making money in the cafeteria. If they sell the food at all, what they are doing is just basically covering the costs of the food, paying the employees, whatever the case is. So the primary mission of that business is education. The secondary mission is food service, right? Or even further down the priority list. Same thing with factories. If you have a factory with 10,000 workers in it and you try to let everybody out for lunch at the same time, you will have a traffic jam in the parking lot that will take 3 hours to clear up, and nobody will go to lunch. So you offer food service in there. And the food service is secondary to the mission of the manufacturing. Healthcare, hospitals, schools, like we talked about, education, jails and prisons, those are all examples of non-commercial food service operations, right? When we think of food service, we automatically think about restaurants. We don't think about institutional or non-commercial areas. And just to be really honest with you, those are some of the steadiest jobs you can have out there, and there's no shame in taking an institutional or non-commercial food service job, unless you're like the wildly creative type that has to, spread their wings. But these are good, solid jobs. Those are the kinds of food service outlets that don't usually close overnight. they tend to have benefits. They tend to have regular schedules. So if that's what you're looking for out of the food service industry, the possibilities are endless. Okay, so just so you know, the El Paso County Sheriff's Department was looking to El Paso Community College to hire cooks for some of their jail outlets. So I think that was last year. So those jobs are out there, and if that's something that interests you, go look for it. All right. So commercial versus non-commercial. Just keep that in mind. Next, we're going to talk about organizational charts and identify organizational structures, various kinds. When we're talking about organizational charts and organizational structures, we cannot have this conversation without talking again about Auguste Escoffier and the implementation of the brigade system. That is really the baseline organizational chart for the food service industry, and it's been around for over 100 years. And we still see some of these stations in the modern kitchen. Now, it has changed wildly over the last 100+ years, but we still see a lot of the same responsibilities. Now, what is an organizational chart? What does that mean? We need to take a big step backwards and talk about that. An organizational chart simply says, with any business organization, whatever you want to call it, who reports to who and who is responsible for what, right? So in the kitchen with the brigade system, the chef de cuisine leads the kitchen operations, or the executive chef, the chef de cuisine. The sous chef assists the chef de cuisine. The chefs de partie are the line chefs, and they're in control of a particular station on the line. And if you remember back to Chef 1301, I'm sure you'll remember this, the saucier is responsible for the sauces. The poissonnier is responsible for the fish. The grillardin is responsible for the grill station. The fruitier is responsible for the fry station, not for fruits. The rôtisseur is the roast station. The potager is the soup station. The légumier is the vegetable station. The entremetier, often combined with the potager and the légumier, is a vegetable station that may also be responsible for fruits, fritters, sweet items served after the roast. And sorbet is often served in contemporary restaurant, and that's a throwback to that. The garde-manger is the pantry chef, often supervised cold food preparations. The butcher, as well as those responsible for hors d'oeuvres and breakfast items. The butcher, or the boucher, worked under the garde-manger. The pâtissier is the pastry chef, and often supervised the production of all baked items. Unlike all of the other chefs de parties, the pâtissier is not necessarily under the direction of the sous chef. They report directly to the executive chef, or the chef de cuisine. So that organizational chart kind of starts splitting up there. It's pretty linear from that point until you get to the pâtissier. Underneath the pâtissier is the boulanger, or the baker, the confesseur, or the candy maker, the glacier, responsible for chilled and frozen desserts, and the décorateur, who's responsible for show pieces and special cakes. So all of those positions are under the pâtissier. And then finally, there's three others that are a little further down on the organizational chart. The tourneau, who's the swing cook, and he would float around from station to station, assisting the line chefs. The demi-chef, who was an assistant line chef, which would kind of be a prep job, right? And then finally commis, who is the apprentice who worked with station chefs or pastry chef to learn that area. All right, so that's a lot of people. So with all of those positions, excuse me, you would have to have a gigantic kitchen to run that type of operation. If you count it up, there's probably at least 20 positions there. How many modern kitchens do you know with 20 people working at any one time? Very few. So The organizational chart for, and this is just applies to the kitchens. It has shrunk dramatically, but we still see the same titles, right? So whether it's executive chef, sous chef, on the stations, we'll see, the saute guy, the grill guy, whatever the case is, and it not only denotes where they work, but what their responsibilities are. So if you're the fry cook or the fruitier, right, you're going to be responsible for chicken wings, French fries, and whatever else, corn dogs, whatever else comes out of the fryer. If you're the saute, you're going to be responsible for all items coming through the saute. Now, what does this organization, the brigade system organizational chart have to do with the modern kitchen? Well, we just kind of talked about that. A lot of the responsibilities are the same, and a lot of these stations are the same. And we've turned that into a very flexible model to where you can have that same kind of reporting, that responsibility of stations and duties and who reports to who, whether it's two people working in the back of a food truck or you're working at the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan, and there are 40 people in the kitchen at any time, and they are using the old school brigade system. So it's all very flexible, but really what you need to take away from an organizational chart is who reports to who, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this semester when we talk about flat and other types of organizational charts, okay? All right, and then finally, as far as the lecture notes, what we need to talk about is moments of truth. Now, this is a phrase coined by Jan Carlsen, and he was the president of Scandinavian Airline Systems. And I believe came out of the 1970s, but moments of truth. It is something that has stuck around for the service industry ever since this guy came up with the concept, right? So a moment of truth is defined as any episode in which a customer comes into contact with any aspect of a company, however remote, and thereby has an opportunity to form an impression or an opinion of that company. Why are we talking about that, right? Well, because this is food service management, right? You guys, when you're in this class, you need to have your management hats on and be thinking like managers, okay? And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have interactions with guests if you're working in a kitchen all the time. You just may be one step removed, right? They're on the other side of the dining room door, and if you screw up a plate and send it out to a guest, whether it's got cold food or an overcooked steak, whatever the case is, that interaction that guest has with your company will gives them the opportunity to form an impression or an opinion, and you want those to be positive as much as possible, right? So the service industry, and that's the industry that we are in, we do a few things, right? We sell goods, which is the food that we put on the plate, and we sell services. And service can be anything from the building that you're in and the decor that you present for your guest, that space that you create for your guest to be comfortable and eat in, and it's going to look different for every kind of restaurant there is, to this actual service, that interaction with people, taking orders, delivering food, pouring wine, answering the phones, taking reservations, whatever the case is. So there's two components always to the restaurant industry, and bad service will always outweigh great food, right? Great service can do a lot to cover up for not so good food. Just keep that in mind. People taking away bad impressions of your service is one of the worst things that can happen to any restaurant, right? So all of those moments of truth, those interactions where people can formulate an opinion about your establishment, need to be as positive as possible. So with that being said, how do we control that? Well, you want to control as much of it as possible, right? So that comes from training your staff properly, making sure that every detail of your business is on point at all times, right? So we have to be as management, we have to be very detail oriented. So start making lists, start training, making training programs, all of these things, because anytime one of those moments of truth doesn't go your way, it's the opportunity to lose a customer, right? And there's an old saying that says, if you have a great experience in a restaurant, you're going to tell, 2 or 3 people. If you have a horrible experience in a restaurant, you're going to tell 10 or 15 people, right? So that's how that moment of truth isn't just isolated to that one particular guest at that one particular time. It can spread, right? And with the advent of things like Yelp, Facebook, whatever the case is, any kind of social media, customers can instantly let the world know that you screwed up. So later on in the semester, we're going to be talking about how to fix these problems, but I just wanted to put that in your lap so you could be thinking about the moments of truth and how it applies to the service industry and what exactly the service industry is. All right, so that's it for the lecture notes. What I wanted to talk to you guys about next is the project and the project assignments. All right, so for this semester, this project, and I've posted the overview of the project along with a criteria sheet for the present. Well, no, the criteria sheet's not in there for this class. I posted the project outline, right? So you're going to have a bunch of project assignments due. Do not fall behind on them, right? So this week for week 1, and it will be due week 2, you're going to have to come up with a restaurant concept or a food service outlet, whatever kind of concept you want. You're gonna have to explain that concept to me, whether it's a steakhouse or a drive-in burger place, whatever the case is. Your concept is yours. It can be a bakery, it can be a sandwich shop, it can be anything you want it to be, but you need to come up with your food service establishment. And if you want to rely on an older project, whether you've taken purchasing before or from safety and sanitation, you can use that concept, but you need to spell it out for me. So I want a 2-page paper, minimum 2-page, on your concept, and tell me about your menu, your specialties, your thoughts, styles of service, what's going to make you special. The decor, the theme, whatever you want. The more information you can give me, the better, because you're going to keep going back to that concept over and over. You're going to give me a vision statement, which is a statement for businesses that guides their internal decision making. You're going to give me a mission statement, which is different from a vision statement. The mission statement tells your employees and the world why you're in business, what it is that you're doing. So research those terminologies. You're going to come up with a logo for your business. And finally, you're going to select a location and research some rents in there. And that'll be really important because next week we're going to go into demographics. So picking a location and seeing what the rents tend to be in that area. Say you pick the Fountains, the rents are going to be, for however much per square foot versus on the west side or out on the east side. So research the rents in those areas. Okay, so you're going to give me those 5 pieces of information, and that is going to be due next Monday. All right, so I believe that's Monday the 1st that it is due by that time. Okay. The following week, you're going to do demographics, like I said. Week 3, you're going to do job descriptions, and I've posted all of this so you can go in and get more details. Week 4, you're going to come up with a marketing plan. Week 5, you're going to write a cafeteria menu based on what we talk about in class. You're going to give me a layout of the cafeteria with front and the back of the house and the flow of people. Also, week 5, you're going to have a midterm exam. Week 6, you're going to do a catered off-site menu and everything that goes with that. Week 7 is a table service style menu. Week 8 is a French style menu, meaning that all 3 courses will be served tableside. That's week 8. And week 9, you're going to cost out recipes for a 5-course meal. And you're also going to pick a POS system, a point of sale system. And then week 10, you're going to give your training presentations. So start thinking about your training presentations, and I will ask you for those next week. I want to know what your thoughts are on two different training modules for front of the house and 2 different training modules for the back of the house, and you're going to create a video to present those, and that will be your part of your final project presentation, and that will be on week 10 along with your final exam. All right, well, thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you guys in our weekly class meeting. I'm still trying to figure out if we're going to do it on Zoom, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, or Microsoft Teams. I'm waiting for some more information, and I will post an announcement later on in the week once I make that decision. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Also, the textbook, the information for the textbook is in the syllabus. All right. Okay, take care. We'll see you next week.